Welcome to CPF Firewire, a podcast from California professional firefighters where we discuss a wide range of issues affecting firefighters, our unions, our families, and the communities we serve.
Hello and welcome to the CPF Firewire. I'm Brian Rice. I'm the president of the California Professional Firefighters, and we represent more than 35,000 frontline firefighters in over 175 affiliated locals. And among those affiliates are more than a dozen locals representing federal and industrial members. These civilian firefighters protect some of our most important and sensitive military and civilian installations, and they face the same risks and challenges as our state and local firefighters, but because their employer is the federal government, they don't get the same protections. And CPF is the only state association in this nation to provide specific representation for our federal brothers and sisters on the CPF Executive Board. In the past, CPF legislation has helped provide job security for federal firefighters displaced by military base closures. We've also ensured that fallen firefighter health and education benefits also apply to federal firefighters here in the state of California. And this year, our federal brothers and sisters won a fight that has been over a decade in the making, and they were able to achieve a federal firefighter cancer presumption. And joining me to talk about that today and this really important issue is CPF 5th District Vice President Charlie Martinez. Charlie represents not only the interest of federal firefighters, but also our industrial firefighters at a number of different facilities across California, and he also represents at the international level also. So Charlie's got a very full plate. He recently retired as a fire captain with the Vandenberg Air Force Fire Department, and he served more than a decade on the executive board of the Vandenberg Professional Firefighters, Local F-116, including 6 years as their president. And I'm just really honored and delighted today to, I'm really excited about why we're here. And Charlie, I just want to welcome you to the CPF Firewire.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you being giving me this opportunity.
Before we jump into it, talk to me about your journey to the fire service. How did it start? How did you grow up? What got you into the fire service? And then not only what got you to be a firefighter, but you have been a tremendous advocate for not just our federal brothers and sisters. You have advocated for firefighters across California and this nation. Talk to me about your journey into the fire service and union activism.
Thank you. It's quite a story. How I became a firefighter really wasn't that dramatic, believe it or not. I don't have my family doesn't have a history of fire public safety. We're mostly blue collar labor guys. Actually, my younger brothers were police explorers for LAPD, believe it or not.
Did you grow up in Los Angeles?
I grew up in Los Angeles, born and raised in San Fernando in the Valley.
Where at? What city?
San Fernando.
Oh, in San Fernando.
Born in San Fernando,
okay.
And then raised in San Fernando, Silmar. And I graduated from Silmar High School and San Fernando, went to school both places. So I was born and raised there. Never left there till I joined the military. But my brothers were police explorers, and so I thought maybe I wanted to be LAPD. It was way back in the day before before all the problems with that they had down in LA. I had 2 speeding tickets. So talk about these little misfortunes becoming fortunes. I joined the military, and I became a firefighter in the Air Force because I figured I'd do 4 years in the military and then come back and try and become a cop again, but when I was in the military and I got my first fire, that the bug caught me.
You were hooked.
I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked. And that's essentially how I became a firefighter.
Your military service, where were you stationed?
Born and raised in LA, San Fernando, Southern California. My first duty assignment was Minot, North Dakota, 40 miles off the Canadian border. So
tell me it was in the winter.
Oh, God. I mean, I'm not making this up. I graduated, came home, said goodbye to my family, and I left LA, 78 degrees, December 23rd. I'm not kidding you.
Okay.
5 days later, driving up the 15 and across the Montana, I drove up to the gates of Minot, North Dakota, 75 below wind chill. In 5 days, I went 150, 8 degrees.
Temperature swing. It's got to be like a world record.
I'm not kidding you. Yeah, it was absolute culture shock for the.
And the key on that one is December.
Yes.
78 degrees in LA.
Yep.
To Minot, North Dakota.
75 below.
Unbelievable.
It was amazing. Oh God, it was. I had no definition of cold by till then, but the department, the guys were great. I mean, I learned a lot from those guys, and I learned how to be a firefighter. And
let me ask you something. In the federal system, you can be a military firefighter, but you can also transition to be a civilian firefighter when you leave service in the military, because you have both, correct? Military and civilian firefighters.
So with the Department of Defense, which is different from most municipal departments, the Department of Defense has their own set of certifications. And in my opinion, they're no different than the states. I mean, in fact, sometimes the states can exceed that. I mean, but with the DOD, you have to have their certs. And most of the time, the only time you're going to get those certs is if you serve, because to become a civilian department, to be a civilian applicant, you have to have these certs. Well, you can't get them on the civilian side unless you're part of the DOD process. It's one of those weird things. We're trying to make changes on that now, but yeah.
Which kind of brings me to another discussion on this, because not only do you represent our brothers and sisters that work in federal service in the fire service, but you represent our industrial locals too. The one I'm familiar with is Burbank Airport firefighters. My familiarity has to do with a contract dispute that we did. I did as a DSFR with Frank Lima, but you just connected a dot for me. I was shocked. It's a relatively smaller department, as with numbers, I don't remember, 20 to 30, but I was really intrigued that almost every single one of them had several years of military experience. Right. That kind of explains a little bit of that transition. I was going to ask you kind of, what do you see are the differences in private service versus federal service or other municipal service? That's a really good question. Set of working conditions, rules, right. And for a labor person, you're operating in a different area. How do you find that?
It's the industrials are kind of each one's own entity. Federal sector, it's pretty straight across the board. Most municipal departments are pretty straight across the board. The industrials, because a lot of them are contractors, through, like in this case, in 61's case, the city of Burbank, Glendale, and Pasadena. My other iLocals, JPL and Moffett Field, are through NASA. So those are two different contractors. So they each carry their own set of rules, and it's their own set of challenges. And it's not so across the board. So the big challenge is just understanding each individual local in its own individual fights. And that's kind of the big challenge. So their certificates may be different because it's all based off of the contract that they're serving.
What's interesting to me, whether you're a Burbank Airport firefighter, you're at Moffett, you're at JPL, you're at a military base, when your function is on base, you have mutual aid agreements that can take you somewhat off base to assist. So it's all the regular, I don't want to say regular, but it's similar call volume that any other fire department or firefighter has. But the one that's always struck me about federal service and now industrial service, when you the potential for an event, they're catastrophic events. They're not just a fire in a warehouse or this or that. Like you and I had discussions about wanting to get down to Vandenberg to see, maybe be there when they do a rocket testing or a motor testing. COVID slammed that whole door shut. We're still going to make it happen. But when you think about that, a rocket testing, a booster testing, we're going to fire a booster.
The potential.
Talk to me about the significant exposures that our federal and our industrial brothers and sisters face.
It's very vast. I mean, these events we talk about are the low frequency, high hazard, high risk incidents. They don't happen that often, but when they do, oh my gosh, they're enormous. And well,
let's stop you right there, and I want to go into it. But in case you're looking for an example, the Mona Ricard was, and I know I pronounced it wrong, probably a major incident that is going to have decades-long ramifications in exposure to firefighters, both civilian, municipal, and federal.
Yeah, the fights to all those exposures, the fight, being part of the Department of Defense, and working with the federal government, especially the military. All those are true. All the exposures are there. What do we get exposed to? We don't know. We've tried to work with the Department of Defense to release that stuff. A lot of that stuff is being held because of national security, and it's just a blanket clause when we try to get any information on what these guys were exposed to. And these are what we fight. When we're talking about the Beaumont Richard fire, we talk about a potential rocket explosion. We had one at Vandenberg last year where a rocket test actually exploded. We had a large aircraft hangar burned down 2 or 3 years ago at Minot Air Force Base. We've had a lot of aircraft flying in, a lot of jet crash. We lost an F-35 not too long ago, I think at Hale Air Force Base in Utah. And what are they exposed to when they catch fire? Well, we have a basic idea what they do. So when it comes to exposures and protections against these the illnesses down the road, we can maybe tie it into that. But what about, say, in the case of the Beaumont Richard fire, where we're trying to find out what the heck burned? What are we guys exposed to? What were our first district guys from Chula Vista and San Diego? What were they exposed to? We're trying to fight the DOD with that. So, the answer to that is this cancer presumption, which we're like, well, there's this fight we could still do and do some good for the guys, understanding the risk of firefighting on federal installations. The black and white is the same as if you go anywhere off base. But the extra complex layer is the fuels, the exotic paints, even on some of these aircraft, the composites that are on them that you don't see on these typical houses, or auto fires on the highway.
So a lot of that stuff, you and your firefighters may not know the composition of paints or different chemicals or fuels because it's a secret. And it is, it's protected. It's security of our nation. Talk about that a little bit. To me, just saying it is kind of daunting because we always want to honor, protecting the United States. We have, this is not a question. But I haven't really taken a moment, except for now, to stop and think about the majority of the exposures you all get, whether it's direct exposure to the chemical, the product, whether it's liquid, gas, solid, it's the products of combustion. That part of the exposure is the same as a municipal.
What happens when it burns?
But what's burning and what happens to it. We're going to get into the presumptive, but talk a little bit more in depth about the exposures because they're critical for federal firefighters.
Right. Now, in fairness, a lot of stuff we do have ideas about. We train on that. We talk about hazmats and on these certain launches. We know what kind of fuels they're using and that type of stuff. But some of these, like the ships or even some of the fighter aircraft, some of that stuff is, they keep it secret because of national defense. Some of the stuff that they use. Those are the things we have questions on. Well, what happens when an aircraft goes to the ground and it's burning? We're in the middle of it. That's the stuff we don't know all the answers to. Sometimes we have some secret aircraft that they may not, they're hush on. Same thing with they have test aircraft all the time. They're always working on and that type of stuff. And we don't know anything about it. The public doesn't know about it because it's still hush. But, what are we exposed to if one of those things go down? There's a lot of things that we don't know about. And case in point is that Beaumont Richard fire. We're still trying to find out what was all in that fire that our guys were exposed to. And I got pictures of them with soot, AFFF, PFAS foam up to their chest. I mean, that is just a complex onion.
Do they ever, does the federal side or the military, I wonder, I want to kind of dive into to the presumptive in just a minute, but I kind of want to stay on the exposure discussion because it makes me think about things that we all get national security and we never, of all the things I think about that I could put myself in a bad spot, that's just one that is, it's not even touchable. I would never be in a position to, I don't do things that would, but it's critically important. And as professional firefighters, I was thinking about this and going, I wonder if the next push would be, if the components of a certain fuel or components of an aircraft or a ship are toxic in and of themselves, but we certainly know that If it burns, it's toxic, and it could be worse than others. I wonder if the next push is pushing the Department of Defense in their MSDSs and stuff like that to say this is, it's an unknown. It's not unknown. This requires a top secret or whatever clearance it is, but we do know that this is a carcinogenic to humans. I wonder if that's not something that we pursue into the future. We don't need you to name it. We need to know how dangerous it is.
We can try that, but I mean, with the Department of Defense, it's a whole nother level. I mean, they are very secretive. With the PFAS fight alone, with the foam, we found out that the Department of Defense actually knew about how PFAS was in our AFFF foam back in the 70s. And they determined, national security, that this foam fighting these aircraft fires was more important than releasing this information. But what they did do is they made changes down the road, behind closed curtains, to take the stuff out. But we're like, well, we could have known this about 40, 50 years ago. So that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with. They do the national security thing, and it's going to be a hard push. We can push for it. But again, the Department of Defense is a big machine. That's going to be a hard fight. But yeah, that's definitely on DVP Johnson's radar, is trying to get the Department of Defense to become more upfront with some of these substances. This
year, finally, and I'm going to let you give the history. Our federal firefighters finally won a firefighter cancer presumption at the federal level. It was included in the National Defense Authorization Act. Mm-hmm. And, talk to me about this journey. And I want you to personalize it, because you're a line firefighter for 25, 30 years. God, and you're like me. I know guys that got cancer, that some recovered, a lot didn't. And some were forced to retire, and many are dead. Our federal brothers and sisters were not acknowledged nor treated correctly until we got this. And I'll just say it. Neither party did our federal brothers and sisters the service that they earned and deserved, because this battle didn't start 2 years ago. It's been going on for 20 years, and it's bullshit the way that our brothers and sisters have been treated. I can say that, and I'm going to say it, and I'd say it to a sitting Congress. I'd say it to the president. We finally achieved something. Tell me about the journey. It's huge. This was a
war. This was an absolute war that spanned over 2 decades. And that's politics in D.C., which is a lot different from state capitals. We deal with 50 senators. We deal with 100 senators. We deal with 435 congressional reps. All of them. We have to have all these stars in alignment. We have to have a president that's friendly to us.
So let's stop here. Talk to me about what happened during the Obama years. Most firefighters, and definitely ones that have different political opinions, would think, well, why didn't he do it? Talk to us about that 8-year span and some of the blocks there.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's held up in committee. The typical phrase, it died on the floor. What happened was, before it even gets to the president, it has to get through the Senate and the House. And before it gets through the Senate and the House, it has to get through the committees. And that's where about 95% of the legislation that gets introduced into D.C. die. So these committees have to hear the bill first and then vote on it before it goes to the floor. Well, before those committees hear it, you have to have that chair give the authorization okay to hear it. And most of the time, we weren't able to do that. Sometimes we were able to do that, and maybe it was pulled because we didn't have favorable numbers. And it came down to numbers and research. A lot of people in Congress, and not talking right now, but history, their thoughts were, well, no, nobody's getting denied cancer benefits. Nobody's getting denied. We're like, what are you talking about? Because federal firefighters, we know we don't have that cancer benefit. We know we don't have that presumption. So guys they were getting cancer. They weren't even filling out the forms.
They were just using their private insurance.
Yes. So that created the false claim that, hey, federal firefighters aren't getting cancer. There's no claims. So a lot of that fight started with educating our guys. Hey, file the claim. You're going to get denied, but we got a data point we can use. That on top of the fact that California was the first state 40 years ago, and it took decades to get more states on board to build our case to say we fight with these guys. So we're absolutely along with you guys. On top of the science, the Cancer Registry Act, all that stuff came in alignment, along with our getting our guys to file claims. And then we really hit it hard last year. We had the best year politically for federal firefighters we've ever had in 2 or 3 decades.
Let's talk about that, because we all know that politics are a hot button issue at any coffee table in any fire station. Camps are divided. But I think, one, it was nurturing this bill for the last 2 decades. But like you said, and you got to give credit where credit's due, we had a Republican Senate.
Oh, gosh.
And we had a Democratic House. And you still managed to get it to a president that signed it. That's no small feat. And let's just kind of go through that. Like you just said, this last year was fantastic. Kind of talk to us a little bit about how those steps started to when pen went to paper.
So trying to get it as a standalone bill was a big challenge, because there's always, we have to prove it in science, blah, blah, blah. But when we decided to try and attach it to the National Defense Authorization Act, that's basically the way the Department of Defense spends all its money on its people, airplanes, blah, blah, blah. Trying to get that attached on this 4,400 page bill.
How many pages again?
Oh gosh, 4,400 pages.
And you read every page, huh?
Oh, every page. No, it was, and in that bill are different things that they want to attach. Well, one of them was our cancer presumption, as well as staffing. And to go through that, you had to get the thumbs up of each committee that was attached to that original bill. Our committee was part of the education. Education and Labor Bill Committee for the House side. The minority leader.
Interesting.
The minority leader of that committee was really against us.
And who was that?
It was Representative Virginia Fox from North Carolina, and that's a name I will never forget the rest of my career. She was a staunch. She was anti-bill. She did not want this happening. Did she ever give a reason why? She feels that there was no science, that there's nothing that dictates that we have higher cancer rates, and her state has cancer presumptive. Her firefighters in the state of North Carolina has a cancer presumptive in place. Where we're like, where are you coming for this? So on the committee, we actually had 2 committee members in California, Isa and Michelle Steele, who are on that committee and voted against it. We tried to talk to them, find out why, what their thoughts were, and we got no joy, no answer. Just
did they
no.
meet with you and talk to you?
I tried to meet with Michelle Steele in D.C. I tied in with President Baldwin from Orange County,
right? And
it didn't sound like we were going to get much
traction,
and we didn't. When it came to vote on the floor, we didn't. She voted no. Isa voted no. The rest of the 50 congressional reps in California, Republican or Democratic, voted for us. So that speaks to the power of the CPF, which I'm forever grateful to.
And the IFF. What'd you see on the Senate side?
On the Senate side, gosh, I don't know the votes on the Senate side. I wasn't privy to that numbers. I just know it passed. And I'm not sure if it was a close vote. I don't think it was. I think it was a pretty decided vote on that, on the Senate side to get it passed. But at least in committee, by that time we had attached it to the NDAA at that point. So instead of the standalone, we just attached it as part of that bill, which made it a different process, a little more challenging, but, more effective.
Whenever I've went to DC on ledge stuff, I've always tried to make sure we bring our federal firefighter issues with us. How important in California and across the nation was that to you as our 5th District Vice President, Jim Johnson as our 16th District Vice President, that partnership with local government, state firefighters, and federal firefighters? I'm glad you asked that. In my opinion, vital. We have 78 locals in the 16th District. Those are federal locals across the country, and I have 78. That's not a whole lot of ground. And we can only reach so many political congressional reps. So, how do we get the work done? How do we get 435 guys on board with us? DC and through these state associations, these face-to-faces, that's how we got the work done. This partnership, the collaboration between municipals and the federal side was absolutely vital. And I'll say it again, it was vital for getting our issues across the finish line. It really was. Me and
President Vince Culver in D.C. last year. We're sitting in their hall waiting to talk to a congressional rep. I heard a couple of guys from Houston Fire, Municipal Department. These guys were kind of going over the issues book, and me and Vince just kind of listening in, and the guys are talking about, okay, yeah, blah, blah, okay, this is the federal firefighters cancer bill. They didn't know who we were, but we heard these guys talking about it, and they're taking it to their reps. That is the collab that was vital and critical to our success this year, that type of stuff. And I'll tell that till the cows come home. It was great. It was great. DC's amazing trip is very vital for our help, and the collaboration that starts at the state and ending up in DC, that's how magic happens.
So obviously is a win for firefighters, a political victory. Over the course of your career, Charlie, just describe to me how this measures up.
Oh man. This is personal. It really, really was. We have a lot of firefighters that just pass on. We at Vandenberg alone, and every local has that, but we had one of our guys, Ray Guevara, who had brain cancer. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, blessing of God, he was able to survive, but there's other federal firefighters that weren't so lucky. Here in California alone, we had Mickey Hooks from Concord just passed last year. An amazing family, the Carneals from Fort Collins, Colorado. Chris Carneal, he died from cancer just 2 years ago. And there are other firefighters who had skin cancer, melanoma, colon cancer. It's very personal to me, and when this victory, living a firefighter's job is just a dream. We get to affect so many lives on an individual basis. Mm-hmm. This victory is just going to cover 10,000 people, tens of thousands of people, not just the firefighters, but their wives and their kids and maybe the next generation. It's going to affect them in a positive way. That change, this one victory is going to help so many lives. And that's more than I could have ever done on all my calls in 31 years of being a firefighter. So this was passionate. When this came across the finish line, I made 2 calls. First call was to retired President Ned Payne, who was F-116's president when we first started this bill 24 years ago. The second call was to President Emeritus John Karate, who took the torch from Ned after that for 17 years. And then I took the call from him. I called them both first, and told them, hey, guys, we won. The second phone call was a Zoom because I had to make this phone call. It was to Dana Carneal, Chris's wife, who was a bulldog, telling her story, knocking on doors, banging on them at times, and telling her story to try and create this awareness. And I had a video Zoom with her because I had to tell her, I said, Dana, you're my second call to my president. I said, I wanted to tell you that we won. And
gives me goosebumps, Charlie.
I'm still tingling now. Her husband, Chris, passed away from cancer. And this is after OWCP denied her. She appealed denial. It was done. And then Chris passed away. And 2 months later, OWCP said, okay, you're covered. So now they're all covered. But I think about this thing. Think about like federal firefighters. Chris Carneal served his country. Mm-hmm. He passed away from what would have been considered occupational cancer. He passed away knowing in his mind.
Tell me a little bit about Chris. How old was he? Married, kids?
He was married to Dana and had a couple of daughters. Okay. I'm not sure how many kids
when he passed.
Oh gosh, he was. I don't know his age, but he was. I want to say he was like in his 40s.
He's a young man, mid-career.
Yeah. So imagine this illness, and you're thinking about is the bills that your family's going to be left with. And you're dealing with all of that as well as fighting this battle. And now, because of this, now that won't happen. Now, when a brother federal side gets cancer and he's fighting this, one thing he won't have to worry about is fighting workers' comp anymore. And that is probably one of the biggest victories in my life, just to think about the scale of what this is going to do and all the sacrifice. And there was a lot of sacrifice to do this on my part. And I don't regret one bit of it because this made it all worth it. And this is what union work does. This wasn't, political guys just coming up with an idea and giving it to us. This wasn't just the guys on the street just talking about our doctors and nurses. These were union guys. These are union people.
Saw the need, filled the gap.
Banging doors, making requests and all that stuff. And
Charlie, how many years were you personally involved in this battle?
Well, gosh, since I became president, that was of F-116 for sure. I told them, I said, look, guys, my number one priority is cancer presumptive. I'll tell you right now, that's my focus. It's obviously focused on the local and the guys, yes, but I'm telling you, I'm going to DC every year. But before that, I would start doing these Relay for Life walkathons, and I would light luminaries for federal firefighters that have passed, guys that I was in the military with back in the day. Every firefighter, well, not every, most firefighters in the federal service wore the uniform at one time. They wore the uniform and served their country where they had cancer presumptive. And when you just decide to leave service and become a civilian firefighter, even if you're still serving your country, and it's, poof, you don't have cancer presumptive anymore.
It was just like a night and day.
It was, yeah. And like you said, that was a huge, disservice to us. So a lot of these things, I've been vetted into this for a long I can't give you a date, but all I can know is as long as I've remembered since I've been an active union member, this has been my goal. This was, as you would say, this is my holy grail.
Yeah.
This is what I wanted for the guys. And if nothing happens tomorrow, if I drop dead tomorrow, it'll be worth it because of what this is going to do for a lot of lives. And I'm so proud and blessed to have this happen.
There were other significant gains in the Defense Authorization Act. What are a couple of the other ones that you were able to see that benefit our frontline federal brother and sister firefighters?
Two in particular in the National Defense Authorization Act. Two in particular was our staffing requirements and the PFAS in our PPE. Mm-hmm. That one's going to be a tough one with the PPE because they're still trying to figure out get geared that's safe for firefighters and doesn't have this PPE.
Right.
Or these PFAS. So they're working on that. That's a big one. But that's a down the road thing. But at least the ball's rolling. Before they were like, we were just kind of, wait. But now we're putting DOD on notice that this is going to happen. You need to come up with this idea. The other one is staffing. Now, I wish it was done a little bit better because they required the staffing of 4 firefighters on an engine and 3 on an aircraft firefighting rig. And before the DOD, a lot of them were going with just 3, and then maybe 1 or 2, and even some cases 1 person on that aircraft firefighting rig. Okay. So right now with this bill, it forced DOD to say, "Hey, you will put 4 and 3 now." So they need to do that, but that doesn't increase the staffing for that department to hire more. And that's what we need to kind of tie in on the back end to put these many firefighters on here. So we don't want to give the chiefs opportunity to say, hey, we're going to brown out a station just to do this thing. We don't want that. So that's one case. It's a victory, but I think we can improve on that. We're going to work on that. The other thing that was not part of the NDA was called the Fair Retire Act. So here's one thing. For part of our retirement package for specialty firefighters, when you're a federal employee, you get 1% a year for your retirement
for service. That's your credit, 1% a year.
So for firefighters, we get 1.7%. So it's a little bit more.
Charlie, I want to put that into perspective on the retirement piece. You did a 31-year career where you have a 1.7 factor, so it's not going to be 61%. It's going to be less than that. I don't have a math or a calculator here, but I'm going to guess it's probably going to be in that 50% arena.
Oh, it's less than that.
It's less than that.
The 1.7% is just for the first 20 years. You have to serve at least 20 years in order to get that retirement. And then anytime after that, you're only getting 1% a year. So I get credit for my military service, which is only 1% a year. So I'm looking at about, I want to say 41% of my high 3. And my high 3 as a 31-year captain was about $69,000-$70,000. It's not much for the federal service. It really is.
It's a lot of difference. And that's I didn't want to get too personal there, and I appreciate that. I want people to put things in perspective.
Right.
And and I want to go off and talk about the political piece of this here and the battle that was. And here's what's interesting. We went through, this battle took place during Democratic presidencies, Republican presidencies, Democratic House control, Republican House control, same on the Senate side. But where I'm going with this, you just passed it. That's pretty damn bipartisan to get it through on this last Congress. Men and women that are sitting out there listening, this didn't get through because it's the right thing to do. The federal firefighters in our IAFF 16th district, all federal firefighters across this nation, I can only speak to the CPF 5th district, it got through because you fought for it. Nobody passed it because we love firefighters we want to do the right thing by firefighters. And I'm saying this because it's a lot of the bullshit that I hear, and I'm just going to be pointed with it. Politics is everything in this business. And you may not like it, and it may not be what you want to hear at a coffee table, or it may not be what you're going to spout off or what we hear spouted off on apparatus room floors or this or that, but it's the way of life.
Right.
And you have to be in the fight, no matter who it is, Democrat, Republican, you have to be in the fight. And where I really want people to understand, this was a fight worth having.
Yeah.
And you won it because you battled for it, and you were relentless, and you didn't give up. You didn't win it because of the badge, because of the title firefighter. You won it because your union, whether it was F33, 116, I don't care who it was, you won it because your union pitched the fight. This is a huge example of the value of organized labor, the value of labor in the United States of America, and the value of grassroots labor. And I can't say it enough. I salute you. My hat is off to you. I'm in awe of what our 5th District members and our 16th District at the IFF were able to accomplish. We didn't get it done because people love us. We got it done because of people like you, Charlie Martinez, the Kenny Harrells, the Jim Johnsons, the Ian Piccolos. That's how we get this stuff done. It doesn't just magically happen.
This is not, by all means, just a California thing or a Charlie Martinez thing. We have, in 2016, we decided to form a 16th District Legislative Committee, and that is a committee of, to use a Dave Gelati phrase, union OGs. I mean, some hardcore, old school, federal labor leaders, starting with Jim Johnson, who formed a committee, Tank Colbram, so the chair. And we got some guys that are across the country. This effort was a large part of them, working with Greg Russell at the Government Affairs Office in the IFF. This was across the country. This is not just me. I can't take credit. It's the right thing to do, is to give credit where credit's due. And I'm telling you, that 16th District Legislative Committee that I am honored to be a part of, that's where that's where it got bloody. That's where the phone calls came in. That's where the late nights and phone trips and emails, that's where it all came from the Legislative Committee in the 16th District. So this was definitely a big win. And when people say, thank you, and tying into what you're saying about this being a union win, I'm 3rd generation union. I've seen what the union has done with my father. My grandfather was a union guy when he came from New Mexico to California. He was a bricklayer. And I've seen what the union has done for my grandmother when he passed away. She got a check every month, $88 a month, maybe not so much now, but in 77 it was. But she got it every day, every month of every year until she passed away in 2012. My father with labor, same thing. His career was saved because when they closed down the plant, he was given an opportunity to retire somewhere else. That's just a snapshot of here today. When people talk about the unions, and people look at unions a little bit differently now, it's just a different generational thing. I get it. But when we get wins like this, a lot of times I think, hey, you know what? Instead of thanking me, pay your dues. You want to thank me?
There you go.
Pay your dues, because this was not because of, whatever issues you are priority to you that have nothing to do with the job or nothing to do with what the goals of this union. Whatever those are, understand this wasn't because of that. This was because your union guys were fighting for you. So if you want to thank me or thank any leader, you pay your dues. You absolutely pay your dues. And that's how you thank me, because that's how this was done, is through unions, the backs of unions and labor leadership. But I have to give a big shout out to my 16th District Legislative Committee brothers. You guys are the reason we got this done. It was a team win,
Charlie, what's next on our horizon? What are a couple of issues? We're coming into our Ledge Conference, both in California, but the international. What is an issue or two that we need to put on in CPF, our brothers and sisters that are going to Ledge Conference? What do you need to focus on for our federal brothers and sisters?
When the Legislative Committee meets, we'll probably meet again in maybe a month or two. We're going to talk about that. I know some issues that came up. We got Fair Retire Act passed last year. That was probably going to be our next issue. We got that passed. So that retirement thing, firefighters retirements are protected now. Even if they get injured on the job and they can't be a firefighter anymore, they can still keep their retirement calculations. So that's taken care of. It was just a huge year. So now we're going to get together. On the horizon, we're probably looking at what's called the Pay Equity Act.
Okay.
So part of our retirement, part of the overtime hours that's mandatory are not counted towards our retirement calculations. It's another nickel and dime that the government
And we're talking
does.
about mandatory. Interesting.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, we work 72 hours, 144 hours a pay period. And a lot of that is, 38 of that is mandatory. You have to do it no matter what. But it's not counted towards our retirement. So we're like, well, that could be $1,200 a year, in retirement. That could be a big number to a retiree. So I'm thinking that may be something on the horizon. I know that's an issue. But right now we've got such a lot of wins that we're literally going to get together and think, hey man, what's next? But with the change in leadership of the House, we're already, as typical, when we have one side leading the others, we're going to be playing defense for a couple of years. We're looking at.
Charlie, before I close out, any closing comments, or what I would say is, what's something you could leave the listenership with that pushes labor forward, that pushes firefighters forward, their families forward, and their union forward?
I tell my guys, there's a certain buy-in, and you hear it from your leaders, you hear it from your presidents, but you just, you hear it at the fire station. You don't even go to the meetings. I tell the guys, if you want to do something for labor, for your future, for your kids and all that stuff, it could be as simple as just showing up to a meeting. Just show up to a meeting, listen, and vote. The next level up is to become a labor leader. Come to DC, especially in California. We'll help you out. We'll teach you how to do that. As people know, I'm passionate about this. I love the labor force. I love the unions. I love my federal brothers and sisters. I don't have one regret being a federal firefighter. Every day of that 31 years, I have no regrets. But one of my greatest passions and my greatest prides was my work in labor, being able to do this. You can change lives. I tell the guys, you can change lives. You're one person, but you can, as a group, Chief Tecumseh, the Shawnee Fire Chief, or Shawnee Indian Chief, he has a quote. I put it on my emails all the time. I said, a single twig breaks, but a bundle of twigs is strong. And that's unions. That's labor. You may be one voice, but collectively, we make a significant fist when we go to DC, when we're together. And if you can't be a part of it, at least pay those dues and support the guys going out there and doing it. Go out there and support them. Pay those dues, and I guarantee you, we hold our guys accountable. I'm held accountable to my guys. I promise you, every second I do, when I wear this suit or when I wear this pin, it's on behalf of my members and the labor force. Every second of my day.
Charlie, just honored to have you here today, and for the time that you put in, the dedication, not just on behalf of our federal brothers and sisters, on behalf of firefighters. And the focus is on the federal system, but I know that you touch everybody because I've watched you do the work around the state. I appreciate you. I'm honored that you're here today. I'm honored that you're on our executive board, and, no better person to link arms with and go into battle. So Charlie, just thank you for being here today. And I can say with surety, the CPF is here to fight to protect all firefighters in the state of California. And you exemplify that in your leadership. And I hope we have many more years coming up of battling on behalf of our brothers and sisters. And with that, I'm Brian Rice, CPF President. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to the CPF Firewire, and I wish everybody a healthy and happy 2023. Thank you, and we'll catch you next time.
You can find CPF Firewire at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, or wherever you find podcasts. Be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. You can also find CPF Firewire at the CPF website, www.cpf.org, and on the CPF YouTube page. We're always interested in getting your feedback, comments, and criticism. Tell us what you'd like to hear about. Drop us a line, info@cpf.org. CPF Firewire is a production of California Professional Firefighters. Our producer is Carol Wills. Our engineer is Matt McDermott. Please join us next month for another edition of CPF Firewire.